Edmund Fitton-Brown is the former UK ambassador to Yemen. He's a former coordinator of UN sanctions and threat assessment. He's also a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defence of Democracy. He joins us now from Austin in Texas. Edmund, in terms of where we are, in terms of what the two men, Netanyahu and Trump, will discuss tomorrow, what's your assessment of Trump's comments the other day, where we are, if peace will happen, if the hostages will be freed? Where are we in all of this?
Well, Peter, it's great to be back. There is a really interesting moment right now, and it's come towards the end of the UN General Assembly meeting in New York. And I think it's partly been accelerated by all the diplomacy that's been going on in the background in New York. And a lot of that has involved Trump's envoys, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. And where we seem to be now is that Trump has presented a 21-point plan to a group of Arab and Muslim leaders that he met with. And he's now going to present that plan to Benjamin Netanyahu in the White House tomorrow.
So what do we know about what's in that? I've read various bits of reporting. Al Arabiya, for example, one of the Middle Eastern stations, sort of talking about quite a lot of the detail of that. Do you think this is a workable plan? What do you think Netanyahu's reaction is likely to be?
Well, the first thing to say is it's very, very ambitious, as any kind of Middle East peace plan always will be. It calls for an immediate ceasefire. It calls for the release of all of the remaining hostages and the remains of those who are dead within 48 hours. There would be the release of large numbers of Palestinian security prisoners. So all of this does resemble a little bit previous ceasefire agreements that have taken place during the last 2 years. But there's more. And above all, there is the idea of starting on a path towards the establishment of a Palestinian state, and also the establishment of some kind of interim authority in Gaza, and a lot of reconstruction. So the reason I set that out in some detail is that this is going to force a number of issues. I guess from the point of view of the people that Trump met from the Arab and Muslim world, it must have been acceptable. I'm not sure what the position is likely to be with Hamas on this, but this creates a big problem for Benjamin Netanyahu, because anything that starts the ball rolling towards the creation of a Palestinian state is going to be unpopular with hardliners in his government.
How secure is he in all of this? I actually interviewed Yossi Cohen the other day, who may well be his successor as leader of Likud. And I just wonder, from Netanyahu's perspective, with an election which needs to happen in the next few months, how secure he is and how secure that coalition is. We've had people in Israel pulling out of the coalition but still kind of supporting the government. It seems pretty unstable, but nonetheless it has been sustained for quite a long period of time.
Yeah, you're asking the absolutely key question here, Peter, and this goes to the nub of what a lot of people who want to see Israel successful and secure are concerned about, and that is whether Benjamin Netanyahu is mainly concerned with Israel's national interests, or whether he's mainly concerned with his own survival and his own political interests. He is presiding over a very insecure coalition, and in that coalition, the National Security Minister and one other minister are both threatening that they will resign and they will bring down the government if he makes concessions that they consider to be unacceptable. And you have to remember that Israel was racked with general elections before this period of Netanyahu's rule. All of the general elections came out very close to 50-50, which makes the government very insecure. And the backdrop to that is that Netanyahu faces a number of legal difficulties in Israel. And if he falls from power as prime minister, he will face both an inquiry into what happened on the 7th of October and why Israel was so badly prepared, but he may also face legal jeopardy and potentially jail time.
Certainly, and we know that some of the evidence or attempts for him to give evidence to corruption trials and so on have been postponed on many occasions. Just speaking of politicians in trouble and political figures perhaps in trouble, Steve Witkoff's son, the New York Times alleges, solicited billions from Qatar as his father negotiated ceasefires. Is this going to be a problem, do you think, or is this just noise?
I mean, I don't want to call it just noise, but I don't think it's going to be a big problem either. The reality is that the Trump administration has a certain way of doing business, and a lot of this is to do with people's connections. He trusts people who have successfully done business, and the overlap between statesmanship and business in the Trump administration is something that we're finding it hard to get used to. But I don't see that creating any kind of problem for Witkoff with Trump.
Just with Netanyahu at the UN on Friday, very arresting scenes there of many, many people walking out. You used to work for the UN yourself. What goes through your mind when you see the people who won't even listen to the leader of Israel?
I see a bunch of overgrown student protesters. And it used to frustrate me enormously at the UN. Unfortunately, this particular part of the UN that's been highlighted in the news this week because of this gigantic event in New York, it's the General Assembly. It brings everybody together, all of the UN member states, and it has a long and really quite shameful history of grandstanding by some of the worst leaders in the world. And so when you get a moment like Netanyahu speaking, you will get all of these childish, knee-jerk anti-Israel countries walking out to try and make their point. What I liked in all of this was watching the United Arab Emirates delegation, who sat respectfully throughout the speech and didn't leave until the applause had died down. And that's how everybody should have reacted.
Thank you, as always, Edmund Fitton-Brown there, former UK ambassador to Yemen, former coordinator of UN sanctions and threat assessment, and a senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defence of Democracy. Always worth listening to in his views on the Middle East.